today I'm very excited to drive a very important new premium executive sedan. It's Mercedes' smallest rear-wheel drive sedan, the new C-Class, codenamed W206. Mercedes touts this as being its most electrified C-Class ever, pointing to the new C300e plug-in hybrid, which has a massive, almost 25 kilowatt-hour battery pack that can give it an electric-only range on the WLTP cycle of 100 kilometers or 62 miles. Meaning, if you're not going to drive it long distance and you can charge it regularly or at home preferably, you will hardly use any gasoline in that engine. And you can also fast charge the new plug-in hybrids from Mercedes. So that's pretty good. I think the charging capacity is 50 kilowatts. But today I'm not driving the plug-in hybrid. I'm actually driving the most powerful diesel version, the C300D, which is motivated by a 2-liter twin turbocharged diesel engine that actually debuted on the previous version of the C-Class, the W205. And it has the same specs, 265 horsepower and 550 Newton meters of torque. It is also a mild hybrid, as are most, if not all, new cars, especially the ones that are sold in Europe. And the electric motor that this car has provides 15 kilowatts of power, or 20 horsepower, about 20 horsepower, and 200 Newton meters of torque. They don't combine, so you can't combine the 500 Newton meter output of the engine with the maximum 200 Newton meter output of the electric motor, but the electric motor helps when setting off from standstill, which is when cars with internal combustion engines, and cars generally speaking, use the most fuel or electricity if they're electric. So the electric motor uses the energy that it has stored in a small battery to give you better acceleration and improve efficiency. And let me just tell you, this car is really quick. I did get to experience this powertrain in a GLC, but that's heavier, it's bigger, and it's nowhere near as fun as this C-Class. And since the C300D version is more powerful than the gas-burning C300, which gets just 258 horsepower, this diesel 300 is actually quicker by around 3/10 to sprint to 100 kilometers per hour. This car does it in 5.7 seconds. Both versions are limited to 250 kilometers per hour or 155 miles per hour. So what has Mercedes changed from the W205 to the W206? Well, the vehicle is all new. It is a bit longer. It now measures 4.75 meters in length, and as a result, it has slightly better rear knee and headroom. Being a slightly larger vehicle, the new C-Class also gets a slightly larger trunk by 45 liters. One big change that Mercedes has made with this generation of C-Class is it has ditched any engine bigger than a 4-cylinder 2-liter unit. That's right, you can only get the new C-Class as a 4-pot. The previous generation had available 6 and 8-cylinder engines, but in order to comply with increasingly stringent emissions regulations, Mercedes has decided to drop anything bigger than a 2-liter, even for its AMG models. So the next C63 AMG will be a 2-liter plug-in hybrid with probably around 550 horsepower, maybe a bit more in the S. We'll have to wait and see. And that's a bit of a shame, because Mercedes' new inline-6 engines, both petrol and diesel, they're actually very efficient and very refined, and they are a joy to use and to put to work. And now, because Mercedes no longer needs that much space under the hood, it has shrunk the front part of the car slightly. I mean, it has pushed the A-pillars further forward, and this too contributes to the sensation of space you get inside the car, although it's not really the most spacious feeling in its class. What else has Mercedes changed? Oh yeah, it has dropped the air suspension that it used to offer on the W205 because it was a very poor selling option. The only way to get air suspension in the W206 is to get one of the plug-in hybrid versions, because those get standard self-leveling air suspension on the rear. You cannot specify it on any other version, even as an option. The C-Class now comes with regular steel springs, sports suspension without adaptive dampers, which is what I have in this very well-spec'd AMG line example that I'm driving today. And sports suspension with adaptive dampers. Another W206 novelty is the newly available rear wheel steering system. This has never been available on a C-Class, and I'm pretty sure it's the only vehicle in its size bracket that gets a steering rear axle. It is optional, of course, but if you spec it, it reduces the turning circle to under 11 meters, and it also reduces the number of turns that you need to apply lock to lock, which drops from just over 2.3 turns to 2.1. The wheels don't turn quite as much as they do in the S-Class, whose rear wheels can turn up to 10 degrees in the opposite direction at lower speeds. But even the 2.5 degrees that these wheels turn is enough to enhance the feeling of agility that you get in this car. And speaking of feelings of agility, I think this new C-Class, it is remarkably agile and sporty. It is far sportier feeling than the W205, even in comparable spec. The old car used to feel quite floaty and detached somewhat. You can check out my review of the C300DE diesel plug-in hybrid, a very interesting version of the old C-Class that you can no longer get. I mean, the powertrain was not transferred into this new shape. You can only get a gas engine-based plug-in hybrid these days. And that car had 700 Newton meters, but with the plug-in hybrid system, it also weighed nearly 2 tons, around 1.9 tons, so it really flopped around on its soft suspension. And even non-plug-in hybrid versions of the previous C-Class, even with the AMG pack, did not feel as sporty and as connected as this. For me, this is the biggest revelation about the new C-Class, just the way it drives. And it's thoroughly comparable to a 3 Series BMW when it comes to its sporty feeling. I mean, really. It's funny because I feel that over the last 2 generations, BMW has really tried to improve the comfort levels in its vehicles to match Mercedes and other manufacturers that are more inclined to make their vehicles comfy rather than sporty. I guess Lexus would be another name, although it's not as big a seller outside the United States as these German brands. And with the 550 Newton meters that this car has on tap, which is accessed from 1800 RPM, as well as the instant response from the electric motor, this vehicle feels very, very frisky and fun to drive and willing to kick its tail out just to entertain you. And it's a 4-cylinder diesel, and it does this in the dry. I need to point this out. Even with the big 18-inch staggered wheels, I'm not sure how wide they are in the back. I think they're 265s or 275s. I'll check it and put it on screen. But they cannot contain the mountain of torque that this engine is able to output. And today, because it's such a rainy and slippery day, whenever you prod the throttle more, you do see the traction control light come on. Like, let's see if I stab it now. Yep, still losing traction. Even now. It's, I like it because I'm an enthusiast and I am expecting the car might step out and I am ready to correct it. But maybe this car is a bit too frisky for someone who is not an experienced driver and who likes this kind of thing, I guess. I like it, as I previously said. It is fun for me, but it might be scary for someone. And I'm surprised by this because not even the BMW 3 Series with a similarly powerful engine feels like this. Kudos Mercedes for having the balls to not make a car that's dull and it's fun, even in 2-liter diesel form. But boy, is this fun to drive. And I also threw it around a few bends and it's very, very composed. The front end is super pointy. Regarding the way the new C-Class looks, I'm going to refrain from using the tired automotive cliche that it looks like a smaller S-Class, even though it does. But that's like taking Mercedes designer's coffee mug in the morning and using it as your urinal. Because designers, this is their design brief. They need to preserve the same family look. So within the confines of that, They still need to be creative and make something beautiful. And I think the new C-Class is a very, very good looking car. So the headlights are similar in design to the S-Class, but again, they are actually unique to the C-Class, and they look really good. The grille is now like an angry person's mouth. It's like this, and it just makes the car look more aggressive. If you opt for the AMG pack, which this tester has, you get a very cool looking, I think, star pattern. The Mercedes three-pointed star becomes the grille's pattern. And while it might sound, well, a bit much, it's actually very tastefully done. There are versions of C-Class with more restrained grilles. I mean, the base version gets like vertical bars. Knowing that Mercedes pushed the A-pillars further forward on this vehicle, I was expecting it in person to look more like a front-wheel drive vehicle. But it doesn't. The hood still looks long. This still looks like a premium sedan with a longitudinally mounted engine. Honestly, I can't really tell. I would be lying if I told you that I can see the fact that the A-pillars are further forward and there's more greenhouse per vehicle. The side of the vehicle is simpler and more flowing. It has fewer creases. It is less busy. Probably the most striking thing about the side of the vehicle are the very bold side sills that you get with the AMG pack. They have like a protruding wing detail. Basically, they stick out, is what I'm trying to say. My AMG line tester also has the sportier rear bumper, which gets two sets of fakery. Firstly, there are the vertical vents on the exterior of the bumper, and those lead nowhere. The previous C-Class also had fake vents and fake exhausts. In this new C-Class, the exhausts are much more offensive, especially on the AMG pack car. These exhausts really annoy me. I mean the fake exhaust, because the actual exhaust pokes out underneath the bumper, behind the bumper somewhere. You can't see it. I'm not sure why they are hiding the exhausts in shame. Yeah, it is an internal combustion engine vehicle, but it's remarkably efficient. You can average 7.5 liters per 100 kilometers, which is great for a vehicle this powerful and quick. So why hide it? Embrace the fact that you have an internal combustion engine that you have tuned to be very efficient enough to be legal these days, which is an achievement because governments have declared all-out war on the internal combustion engine, and they are now putting the blame on you for global warming. So it's your fault because you went to the supermarket last weekend and you drove there. I really don't understand why Mercedes does this on most of its vehicles. I mean, does Mercedes think that people who buy this vehicle are shallow and materialistic and they like to show off things that they don't actually have? In this case, real exhausts, real sporty looking exhausts. Sorry about ranting, but I really do not like those exhausts and what they stand for, I guess. But overall, I think the W206's exterior is quite successful. I like it. It's very good. You really appreciate how pretty it is when you see it in person. And I guess the only other thing about the exterior that I might not like are the AMG rims. They look fine. They are 5 spokes, well, 5 double spokes, so 10 spokes in total. And they would look good without the thick lip thing, the black lip around the exterior that makes them look like they are 16-inch wheels. Again, I don't understand the design decision. I noticed that most new Mercedes AMG rims have a design similar to this. They look all right, but I think that when it comes to the wheel size on cars, bigger is usually better, especially, I mean, only in terms of the visual appeal in most cases. The interior of the C-Class looks like the interior of the S-Class. In this top-of-the-range spec with the optional 12.3-inch driver's display and the 11.9-inch portrait-style display for the infotainment, the center display, this cabin feels extremely plush. As standard, this vehicle comes with a 10-ish-inch driver's display and a 9.5-inch display in the middle. And if you get the smaller center display, you will get physical climate control buttons. With the larger screen, Mercedes has opted to dedicate the entire lower part of the screen to climate functions. And they work about as well as they do in other cars that have adopted solutions similar to this. So you can either press on the up and down buttons to change the temperature, for instance, or you can just swipe up on it, which feels more intuitive. And I guess this is the way you would do it on the road because it is hard to hit the button that you want to hit. I guess if you swipe from left to right, yeah. Oh wait, no. So it only works for the temperature. It doesn't work for fan speed, so only up, down, not right, left. This vehicle also comes with very advanced around view camera functions. Now it's a bit wet outside and there's water on some of the lenses, but when it's not wet, the system is actually very good at showing you where you are. So you can select the front camera, the rear camera. You can get side 3D perspective, I guess, or from the right. So you can see the curb, you don't curb your wheel. Or this auto function that adjusts things for you. This is the self-parking system. You have to drive your car, and when it detects a parking spot, it will be displayed, and you just tap on the command, and it will park itself. The screen is very good. So in vehicles with the larger center screen, the only part that clicks is this bar here that has the driving mode selector. You can enable or disable parking functions. You can bring up a menu which allows you to turn the head-up display on or off and to basically have access to all of the vehicle's settings through this shortcut. There's an actual hazard light button. Next to it is a fingerprint reader. Next to it is the button to turn the infotainment off. And next to that are volume controls. What's interesting about this system is that it has just one click. And whenever you click the entire bar without actually having your finger on one of the functions, it doesn't do anything. That's kind of interesting. So you can click it and it doesn't do anything. And I'm not sure why some reviewers have a problem with this because I think it's a fine solution. I don't mind it. The 12.3-inch optional screen is configurable. You can have multiple styles of display on it. I like the sport one a lot. And what's interesting is Mercedes has opted to ditch a traditional rev counter in the sport display. So when you select sport, you now get a visual representation of how much power you're using. So on the left you have a torque meter, I guess, and on the right it shows you how much power the engine is providing. This car has a very advanced head-up display. It's not augmented reality, but for instance, it duplicates the sport display on the windscreen. I mean, the exact sport display. That's very nice. You can configure it to not have it there, but I think it's quite cool. This car gets an augmented reality navigation function, just like in the S-Class. So you set a destination, and then as the vehicle guides you along the route, as you approach important points, like a junction where you, have to make a left turn, you will see arrows on screen get closer to you on the display, not on the windscreen, like in more advanced systems. But you see it on the screen and the arrow approaches you. And other bits of information are overlaid on top of what the front-facing camera sees. And it's actually a really useful system, especially if you're in areas that you don't really know very well. I think that's an important improvement to traditional navigation systems that just relied on showing you a map representation of what was going on. Unlike in the S-Class, which gets this new style of Mercedes interior, in the C-Class, the screen is actually oriented towards the driver. So the entire console is shifted by 6 degrees so that it faces the driver more than the passenger. And in fact, Thomas from Autogefühl actually measured how much the dashboard protrudes outward with the doors open. So when you open the door, this part here, that is left hanging like a console, I guess. And it is bigger on the right side than it is on the left side by a few centimeters. So the dashboard itself is entirely moved slightly. It is shifted to give this wraparound feeling. Opening up this center cubby, this is when you notice that the console is slanted slightly, because the lid goes into the console straight and then the edge is at an angle. Inside you have one USB-C, some of the best cup holders that I've ever seen in the vehicle because they are, well, they are adjustable. There's this part that flips up if you have a smaller drink, and they are also very, very deep. So you can put like a taller drink in here and you won't run the risk of spilling it, even if you drive the vehicle quickly. There's also the optional wireless charging pad in there, which is kind of fiddly to access, but it works. The center armrest cubby gets 2 USB-Cs. The door pockets are pretty big. You can fit a 2-liter bottle or a 1.5-liter bottle. Sadly, they are not lined in felt, so stuff might bounce around, and the plastic here feels kind of cheap. Older C-Class generations had soft touch plastic here, but Mercedes has cheaped out on the new one. You won't really notice it and it looks good, but if you touch it, it's not as good. And the same goes for the plastic around the center console. Listen to this. Again, older C-Class generations had soft touch materials here. And this bothers me because this is where you rest your knee on longer journeys, and now it's kind of hard. I'm nitpicking, I know. I perhaps should be telling you stuff about the amazing AMG steering wheel with the split spokes. It looks really good, and it has both touch and physical controls, so you can operate some of the controls in 2 ways. But what's most remarkable about it is just how nicely it feels in the hand and how nice it looks, to be honest. It also has paddles, so you can shuffle through the 9-speed automatic transmission. I'm not really sure why you would do that manually, because I always find it kind of strange to manually shift gears in a vehicle that has 9 speeds. You don't really know if you're in the right gear. The car does it itself anyways, so when you drive a vehicle with a 9G-tronic transmission, you will notice that the car is constantly shifting into a different gear depending on how much you're pressing the throttle, the mode that you're in, and you don't really feel it because it's a very, very smooth and very good transmission. It's one of the best in the business. The vehicle can also drive itself. It can maintain safe distance to the car in front. It can steer to keep you in lane. It can change lanes for you when it is driving itself. I think Mercedes has one of the best semi-autonomous driving systems on the market, even though they don't make such a big fuss of it like other manufacturers, but it works. It seems to be, in my experience, more reliable. I think the new C-Class is pretty great. It's comfy, as you can see while I'm driving over this uneven cobbled road. It's sportier than before, it's better looking than before, it has a better interior and more special feeling interior than before, even though some of the materials are not as good as in older C-Class models. I mean, a W203 feels higher quality than this, but in a more old school way. This feels modern, contemporary, and techie, and very nice. And very paranoid for no reason. I like the exterior look of the vehicle, and I think it finally looks good with or without the AMG pack. And I think this vehicle has shot up to the top of its class. This pretty much sums things up. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you have not done so already. And I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.